If you're a complete beginner to Hubitat, you are in the right place. By the end of this guide, you'll know how to get yourself kind of set up and established. Inside the box, you'll find the little Hubitat module. You'll also find a network cable and a power cable along with a USB power supply. Start by connecting the USB power supply into the power module and the Ethernet plug. Then we're going to connect this up to our home network. Now, although you don't have to, I strongly recommend you make this IP a static IP. You'll have to follow your router's documentation to do so. Once you have your IP set up, connecting to the device is really a snap. You can just take a look at the little card that you got along, and if you follow the address down there, that'll get you logged right into the Hubitat. After you get to the main screen here, you should see your hub at the bottom. Go ahead and click on that to connect to your hub. This will bring up the welcome screen and the welcome logo. You can optionally read the terms of service if you want, or do what I always do, just click and go next. You can skip this guide. However, if you want to take a brief overview, it doesn't hurt to take a look at it. On the tail end of this thing, you're going to need to aim your Hubitat, put in your postal or zip code at the bottom, and you can go ahead and save and exit to the main menu. Here's your main menu screen. Now I recommend the first thing that you do is register your hub. This isn't going to help you right now, but I promise you later you're going to regret not doing this step now, so you might as well just get it out of the way. There's a lot of support on the community that's going to help you out with setup of device drivers and apps that you're going to need. After you've got the registration process complete, probably the first thing that you should do is go ahead and click on settings and then check for updates. Now this will take a couple of minutes to download and install the updates, and your hub is going to reboot as soon as that's done. Okay, now for the fun part, let's get to actually doing something on this device. The first good place to start is adding the dashboard. It's going to kind of familiarize you with the user interface a little bit, and that was necessary for me. To do this, click on apps and add a built-in app, then scroll down to the Hubitat dashboard, create a new dashboard. Now you can see I already have a bunch of devices under here, and if you don't have any, that's totally fine. You can always add them later by going back into the apps, clicking on your dashboard, and then choosing to add devices. Once that's done, you can click on done, and then if you click on the dashboards on the left side menu, you'll see the dashboard we just created there, dashboard main. Now you can optionally add auto add tiles. I would recommend just manually adding the tiles as you add devices to your home setup. Adding a device is super easy. You just click on the plus sign on the top right and select the device that you want to add. It'll show up on the list on the left. Select what kind of device that is. Once you have that, click on add tile and the tile will show up in the background. If you now close out this box and then click on the three dots next to the tile that you just made, you can move this thing around, change the size of it, and have it wherever you want. The green boxes in here will actually show you the relative position of that tile to the rest of your tiles. Don't worry too much about this right now. This is just kind of how to get started. Once you add a switch, add it to your dashboard, put the tile in if you want it, and this is kind of the main user interface of where you look after everything. Great, we got our dashboard set up. Now it's time to add some devices and add some apps. The app that I'm going to add here, Ecobee, also runs the devices, so that's handy because it saves me from having to independently add every single device. Now when you do add a new device to your system, I strongly recommend you make that IP static for all the devices because it will show up in the configuration here and it's going to make your life a lot simpler for reliability. To add an app, just click on the apps on the left side again, and this one has a built-in one for the Ecobee, so I'm going to use the Ecobee integration. And now what you'll have to do if it is an integrated app, a lot of times you'll have to get to the login screen or give it the OK to kind of link between the two devices. So I'll enter the username here and the password, and that's going to move us along to the next step. Once you have that whole login set up, you should see a screen kind of like this, authorizing the app to have access to your device. And at this point, click on the next and you'll get some options here. And now they're all going to be different depending on which device you have. So I'm going to kind of guide you through this one. Default polling here, it says 5 minutes, and I strongly recommend just start with defaults because everything's been working very good on default settings so far for me. Click on done, and once that's all set, this app is now connected, and this app will automatically connect all the devices associated with it as well. So now what do you do here if you don't have any default device drivers? It's not a big deal. This community is awesome and there's tons of different connectivity options available. start by just going to Google and doing a search for whichever device you're looking for. In this case here, one of the apps that I needed was the Kasa app for the TP-Link switches. So just add Kasa and Hubitat, and the first link on takes me to the Hubitat community, which is awesome. Now here's a complete set of apps and drivers, everything that you need to get yourself going, along with an installation guide, because they are pretty unique. So do pay attention to the instructions when you're putting this thing together. Now I won't show you how to do this one at this time, but that gives you kind of a brief overview on how to get these things set up. Anytime you add a device, the first place to go back to kind of is your app screen, to your dashboard. Add that device or enable that device there, then you can go back to the dashboard and add the tile if you do want it to show up as tiles. Now what if you don't want to add the tile or add the dashboard, you just want to add an automation to this switch? Well, let's go take a look and see how easy that is. To begin, we're going to go back to the app screen and then to the rule machine. And here we create a new rule. Name this thing whatever you want, and what's kind of goofy here is you actually have to hit enter for this to open up the next screen. Once you do that, it'll toggle down and you can select a trigger. Now a trigger is just quite simply what initiates the function of the switch. So in this case, I want a switch to come on at sunrise, at sunset. And we can default it if you want to sunset, or we can go like a minus 10 minutes. Click on done. So now that every day at sunset, minus 10 minutes, that's going to start this rule running. Next, you're going to have to specify an action that you want to run. So what do you want this thing to do at that specified trigger? In the case of us here, we're going to turn a switch on and off, and we can just go to an outdoor front lights, for example. This is my outdoor front lights of the house. Add a delay if you like, or you can just leave it. And then the toggle there is turned on, and click on done. Great, so now we got our lights turning on at 10 minutes prior to sunset, but we also want to turn these things back off. Otherwise they'll turn on once and they'll never turn off unless you manually turn them off. Well, that's not fun, so let's fix that up. You can do that by adding a delay and wait for an event, and this event can be whatever you want it to be. There's quite the options in this drop down. I think the easiest way to do it is just maybe add sunrise, or you could specify a time. So once you have sunrise, add it in there. You can go done with wait events, and now what this thing's going to do, it's going to wait for sunrise before it executes the next function underneath this function. Going back to, we're going to add the turning the switch off, selecting the same switch again, the outdoor front lights, updating that, and then don't forget here to turn the toggle, because by default it's going to be on. And there we go. We've got a simple automation. Now that we're done with the actions, kind of just review and make sure it makes sense to you before you click on done. And it definitely does here. We're going to come on to 10 minutes prior to sunset. Lights are going to come on, then it's going to wait for sunrise, and then the lights are going to come off. Now you can click done, and you should see the rule and the rule integrations. This thing will run every day, all the time, unless you specify otherwise. So that's kind of how the rules work. And that's it. Got your devices set up, you've got something going, and you kind of get yourself started with Hubitat. Found for me this thing seemed kind of daunting when I started because it is pretty much a blank slate. But once you kind of get familiarized with how to add stuff in, it's actually really user-friendly and very easy. And it's extremely powerful in relation to any of the other automations I've used. Running it locally is just a perk. So far, really happy, enjoying this thing.